What's up YouTube, it's your boy Barcode. I'm back with another video. Today's video we're going to step back a little bit and hopefully help some new players and help some troubled players, making a team comp that overall would be optimal. Obviously it depends on what cards you get. The game is RNG with the monsters that you get, so hopefully this can help some. If you like the content, you know what to do. Hit that sub button, hit the like button, and hit that dingy thing so you know when I post a video. Let's get to it. Alright, first and foremost, there's definitely a lot of team comps that you can go with. I'm going to break it down in specific roles. Certain characters you should use in certain spots in your front line and your back line. It really just depends on what cards you get that the game gives you and what monsters you have higher level. There is some monsters you can use at a lower level. You could always put them in the back line, but you do have to remember that there's Hwadams out there and Nickies and AoE damage. So they're going to have lower health, so they're probably susceptible to die. But if you put them in the back line, they might be okay. One instance is Sierra. You can bring in Sierra at a level 8 and just destroy everything. She's broken. But let's talk about these spots in the front line and the back line. First and foremost, spot number 1. This should definitely be a tank or support. If it is a support, you definitely want a support that's a low mana cost or has some kind of passive gimmick. So there's a lot of different options you can choose for spot 1. I'll go over some tanky supports you can use. This obviously depends on what skill stones you have as well, but let's start out with Kun. Kun spot 1 is really good. He has high defense. He can get high health with the runes you get. And if he isn't dead yet and you counter on someone that's in the front line, you can freeze them. You can then follow it up with a damage dealer or single target or a frontline AoE, whatever. And once they're frozen, it's an automatic crit. Royd is a really cheap free-to-play option to use in spot 1. I would only use him if you have his skill stone, the purple one that decreases the damage done. But he does have high defense, but he does have low mana cost, and you can get an armor break on that frontline spot, and that'll help your auto attacks knock down that front guy. A support option would be Bernard. If you have him on Swift and have him on the front line, you can literally start out your whole team on Acceleration 2. And again, if you have a beneficial effect with the skill stone, you can get crit up on your team. Definitely a good team for a speed comp. Molong is a legendary monster, but he's definitely great in that one spot. When he dies, he will attack the forefront enemy or whoever kills him and do really good damage based off his HP. If he isn't dead yet and he has his card in your deck, you can stun the other opponent, which could be really beneficial. Megan's another good monster at spot 1. I would only put her in spot 1 if you have that purple stone. Getting an initial 2 extra mana at the beginning of the match is huge. Last but not least, your big boy tank bear, Ramagos. I'd only put him in spot 1 if you go with some kind of support sustain comp with a Lucia and McKean, and even a Mav with a purple stone. But if you play it right, half the time your backline dies and Ramagos is already left, and he can literally solo the other team. I'm going to skip some spots here and specifically focus on spots 4 and 8. These two monsters should be solo artists. What I mean by solo artists is literally soloing by themselves the rest of the team that's left at the end of the match. Some of these solo artists include Kamoon. He's 4 mana cost. I wouldn't put him at the top of the list, but he can definitely do some damage and heal himself and heal a second ally and apply heal block, which is huge. Zhen, which is the god of soloing, regardless if you have her in a 4 or the 8 spot, she's pretty much in 90% of teams that win. It really just depends on what the enemy has, if they're an AoE comp or just a backline comp or a frontline comp. It really just depends. That's why I say 4 and 8 should both be a solo artist. Zhen cannot be countered unless you're playing the game with a blindfold and got a cat in your lap and he's scratching your face and you accidentally press the button and you somehow magically counter right when they use a skill. Plus the heal, plus the stun, plus the invincibility. She's a goddess. Orion, probably my top 2 solo artist. He can literally 1 versus 3 on countering by himself. The computer AI just knows exactly how to play Orion. When the enemy uses a skill, you counter for Orion, and he's directly gonna stun that monster. Sometimes it is kind of gimmicky, but 9 times out of 10, he's gonna target that monster that's using a skill. It really only happens usually when there's like 3 or less monsters on the enemy team. But when the computer plays Orion right, it's pretty much game over. Thrain is a a monster solo artist. Again, he's more of a counter solo artist, and it really just depends on the team comp that you bring. If you're playing with dots, you just gotta bring Thrain as a solo artist. I mean, you don't have to, but you should. Again, he can literally take out a team by himself. If you have a purple stone on him, he sustains with his own heal. He will stun the enemy team. There's not much you can do. Some notable mentions out there, one would be Lapis. Lapis is a huge 8-spot monster. It really just depends on what the enemy has as well. If you're facing a Jhin or a Ryan or a Sophia, you're pretty much screwed with Lapis. But the shield she has is crazy. She can take out a whole back line by herself. It really just depends on the situation. Finn can also be huge because his skill is very hard to counter. It's a super fast attack on the first two. You could probably counter after the first hit, but you might already be dead by then. And if he actually crits on that last hit and freezes, you're pretty much done. Throwing Ramagos in here just for fun because he can solo. It just depends if the enemy doesn't have a heal block or anything like that. The animation's slow, so he can be countered. So you gotta play this right. And one of my favorites right now, especially with the Vampire Rune buff, is Ragdoll. I was using him before, and he soloed some teams before the buff, and now with the new Vampire buff, he heals for even more. I know new players, you might not have Vampire yet, you gotta level your account up. But once you do, Vampire can actually work on a couple different monsters, but I like Ragdoll the best. Once you got that first, 4th, and 8th spot filled out, I feel like those are probably the most crucial. Then you want to lead with some support and maybe some more damage. Like I said, it really depends on what cards you get in the game and what card levels they are and what skill stones you have. But let's break it down this way. If you have a high level Thrain, bring in a Beretta. Bring in a Perna. Anything with continuous damage so that if you put them up and then they use a skill and you counter with Thrain, you will stun them. If it's a high level Lapis that you have, then bring in a Prelee and a Hraesflag. My boy Hray. More frontline damage. If you have a high level Orion, I would suggest going a full AoE team, whether that's Tessarion, or you can bring in Lucian. If you have a Galleon, you bring him in with Tessarion, add a Ganymede to the mix. When you bring in Orion, I don't like to sustain teams. I like to do as much damage as possible and get Orion out there doing his thing near the end of the match. If you got a high level Finn, then bring in a single target comp. Bring in a Kali, bring in a Sophia, whatever you want to do, but your team comp should align with what your strongest characters are. If your strongest is Ramagos, put him at the front line and use a full sustain comp. This will work even better if you have a purple skill stone for Mav. Every single character here has some kind of sustain for the team. Always look for your strongest monsters. Know what other monsters correlate with that monster. If you have a high level Hodam, bring in a Ragdoll, bring in a Hua. If you have a high level Zabrota, bring in a Sierra. Bring in a Beretta. For the 15th time, it just depends on what the card's given to you from comp to us with the RNG. If you have any questions, you can come to my Discord and ask me on builds, team formation, team comps, what skill stones you use. Link in the description down below. Last but not least, don't forget your supports. Your supports will definitely make your team strong. You also have to know what teams you're normally facing in ranked. There is a meta to this game, but in my opinion, there's multiple metas. And what I mean by that is it depends on where you are in the rank system. You always have to adjust to what you are seeing when you keep playing the game. If you're seeing a lot of Berettas in your rank, then you're going to want some kind of a cleanser like McKean or Eleanor. Bring a Soul Cleanse. If you're seeing a lot of AoE comps, bring a Colleen. If you're seeing a lot of Sierras, bring a Bella. Know how to play against certain comps like Sierra. Wait for them to use a Beretta or a Zabrota and then cleanse on a counter, so she doesn't get the chance to detonate. If you bring a Bella to counter Sierras, you gotta know that you gotta use the skill before Sierra detonates. So try to use it before any other monster puts any debuffs on you. There's so much to talk about with team strategy and team comps and how to play the game. It's hard to break it down in one video. When there's more monsters coming out, there's gonna be more things to think about. I won't go into spells too much, but they should always correlate with what kind of team comp you're using. If you're using a lot of damage over time monsters, you're gonna want to bring Spoil, you're going to want to bring Transfer, and probably Soul Cleanse in case they transfer to you and you don't have your transfer up. If you bring in a sustain comp like this one right here, bring a Reflective Shield, bring Health Conversion, bring Damage Conversion or Divine Protection or Blood Curtain. Support your team with your spells. You're facing a lot of sustain comps, bring a Synergy. You got to adjust. I know I've done a tips and tricks video before, but since I'm talking about for new players or troubled players, I'm just going to talk about a couple different things. One is the Alliance Shop. If you're farming the game daily, and not just doing the daily missions, and I mean playing the game a lot, going in the rank, raising your rank, always buy these glory tokens, max them out every single week. This will give you glory tokens to do glory summons, and the cards that you already have, you get chances for legendaries, everything that you have currently, you can get in a glory summon. You can't get any new monsters, but make sure to do this as much as possible so you can level up your monsters. Always do your cheers. If you're super free to play, don't spend your crystals and summons. It really depends on what account level you are, honestly. But if you're at a point that you have your deck made up, just spend your gems on mana crystals. Mana crystals is the hardest thing to get to right now. And speaking of that, always do your wanteds. Always do them. When crafting runes, make sure to save all your crafting materials, except for the daily mission, but save them until you're able to craft the high runes for the Energy Fatal Swift. It's been a while, but I think it's account level 9, I can't remember. And in order to do that, you gotta raise the monsters levels. And that's why I say spend the gems on mana crystals so you can get to level 9 as quick as possible so you can start getting legendary runes. That's all the time I have today. Hopefully this video helps new players and maybe some players that are troubled and doesn't know what to do next. Or maybe just a refresher for some veterans. Maybe you're so focused right now on a specific team comp that you've made that you kind of forgot the basics of the game. Comment down below if this video is helpful. And if you like this content, you know what to do. Hit that sub button. Hit that like button. Hit that bell dingy dingy thing. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.